Hello and welcome to Sunday's edition of Cracking the Cryptic, where we should probably be calling this edition the Zetamath edition of Cracking the Cryptic. And that's because we're going to be trying to do this puzzle, which is called The Usual Suspects. And this appears, from my brief glance at the rules, to involve clues that are lying to us. So probably we've got to find all the Kaiser Sose's in the grid. And the other puzzle I'm going to be talking about a bit is, of course, Two Truths and a Lie, which is also by Zetamath and also involves lying clues. Now, this puzzle has basically been described by many people as one of the best Sudoku of all time. If you've not had a go at it yet, please do. It's absolutely remarkable. There's a link to play this puzzle under the video. And if you get stuck, you can actually watch me struggle with this puzzle over on Patreon right now. It's a wonderful, wonderful Sudoku with some incredibly intricate logic. And we're going to be releasing that video on the main channel in the next few days. So we will do that by popular demand. Such is the quality of this puzzle. And anyway, what we're going to be looking at today, though, is this one. And I don't know whether this is a prequel to that one, or a sequel, or it was created at the same time, but it's the same sort of idea. We've got, but with less constraints. So Zetamath said that this one, and he's right, has an awful lot of clues in it. There's something like 13 different types of Sudoku rule going on in this puzzle, whereas this one only has killer cages, little killer diagonals, and normal Sudoku rules. So it's much easier for us to explain in a video, because hopefully we won't be sort of spending the first 15 minutes running through the rules. And it goes without saying, Zetamath's puzzles are exceptionally high in quality, and he's one of those setters also who makes me feel a bit dumb. Basically, you're in the presence of somebody who's cleverer than you, and they're going to show you just by how much cleverer they actually are. So it's always a bit sobering taking on a Zetamath puzzle, but we shall see how we do. A couple of things to mention before we get humbled. The first is that we're going to be returning to the Obra Dinn on Tuesday night, 10 PM UK time. We'd love to have your company. And then probably once we've finished Obra Dinn, we'll have a look at, or might go back to Bubba Is You. Although Mark was suggesting earlier it might be nice to play some game or other that we could play with members of the community watching, and that sounds brilliant to me, but I don't know what that game would be. I suggested StarCraft 2 and Overwatch to Mark, and those ideas were poo-pooed. So maybe you guys have got some ideas. Maybe we should be playing Among Us or something, although I've never played that. But you let us know. Other than that, the only other thing to mention is Patreon, where not only have we got My Solve of This going on at the moment, we have got the incredible Japanese Sum Sudoku hunt, which many of you have been enjoying with good reason. Huge kudos go to Panthera and the Asylum for coming up with that hunt. It is a work of art, and an awful lot of you are enjoying it. So if you're a patron of the channel, do check it out. We know you'll enjoy it. Now, that all said and done, let's get on with The Usual Suspects and see what's going on with this. So, we've got normal Sudoku rules apply. In cages, digits must sum to the small clue in the top left corner of the cage. So, those 4 cells there, add them up, you should get 12. Clues outside the grid give the sum of the digits along the indicated diagonal. So, let's look at that one. That is a 7-cell diagonal, and it sums up to 30. So, and such digits may repeat if allowed by normal Sudoku rules. So, in order to make these 7 cells add to 30, we could repeat digits like that, for example. That would be fine. You can repeat digits along this diagonal, providing you don't break the rules of Sudoku. So what you can't do is that, because obviously that's going to break the rules of Sudoku in box 8. Now, this is the complicated bit. In this puzzle, for each total, exactly one of the cages or little killers with that total is wrong. And this is fascinating, and this is what harks back to Two Truths and a Lie. So in this puzzle, there were umpteen types of clue. Let's pick the arrow clues. So there were 2 arrow clues there and a 3rd arrow clue here. And in this puzzle, you were told that 2 of the arrow clues were correct and 1 was wrong. Here, it works the same way but for totals. And so if we take a look at the grid, look, there's a 14 total there. So that's telling us that diagonal sums to 14. Now there should be 2 more 14 clues in the grid or around the grid. One here, look, okay, so let's use different colours. So this diagonal is a 14 clue, that cage is a 14 clue, and this cage is also a 14 clue. So there are 3 14 clues in the puzzle. 2 of them need to be correct, 1 of them needs to be Wrogn. To hark back, of course, that to Demono's incredible Everything is Wrogn puzzle. So I'm probably going to have to call this video Nearly Everything is Wrogn or something. So yeah, we're going to have to go through for each total and work out who's telling the truth and who's telling fibs. It should be a lot of fun. I don't know how difficult this is. It could be monstrous. Sometimes lying puzzles are monstrous. You have been warned. Do have a go though. The way to play is to click the link under the video as usual. Now I get to play. Let's get cracking. Now, often with these puzzles, the break-in, the sort of starting step, is the hardest. Because we've got so... Well, although there is a lot of information in this grid, the fact that a third of it is actually a downright lie makes it very hard to rely on anything. So all I'm seeing here, to be honest, are these 8 clues. They look a bit suspicious. Let's have a think about these and just see if we can get anything from this. So these are the 3 clues that sum to 8 in the puzzle. So 2 of these are correct and 1 of them is Wrogn. Now, can we do anything with that knowledge? Well, the 2 that are real will have to contain relatively low digits, because an 8 clue in 3 cells is either 134 or 125. So if those 2 were correct, these 4 digits would be quite low in box 9. Ooh, that doesn't actually look very profitable, does it? 1. Okay, what about keeping it even simpler than that? Right, and often the key to Sudoku is to ask very facetious questions. So that's exactly what I'm going to do. If we complete this puzzle correctly, how many 1s are we anticipating we're going to find in box 6? The answer is 1, because of the rules of Sudoku, which tell us that each box, row and column must contain each of the digits once each. So there is 1 1 in that box and 1 1 in that box. That's 2 1s. But in the 2 8 cages that are actually correct, so in these 9 cells, there must also be the 2 1s that correspond to the correct 8 cages, which are going to be either 134 or 125. So that means in these 2 boxes, the 1s are confined to these 9 cells, and therefore there must be a 1 in one of those cells, and there must be a 1 in one of those cells. Because you can't obviously put 2 1s in the same box. Now, that is... Ooh, I was about to say that's going to be interesting with the 12 gauge, because a 12 gauge has to have a 1 in it. And I was about to put a 1 over there, but of course this 12 gauge could be telling lies. So where are the other 12 clues? There's 1 here and 1 here. So, do we know... Is there a reason that these 2 clues can't both be true? And the answer to that is clearly no. Right, okay, what about down here then? 14 clue doesn't have to have a 1 in it, so even if this is true, I'm not sure how it's going to interact with that 1 on the right hand side. 17 in 2 cells. Okay, well that's, if it's true, it's an 8-9 pair. Ah, the secret is applying in row 9. That's a little bit interesting. What, of course, is the secret? Well, it's something I only tell my very favourite people. and I'm going to tell it to you. Any complete correct row, column, or box of a Sudoku, by the rules of Sudoku, contains the digits 1 to 9 once each. If you add up the digits 1 to 9, you get 45. Now that row, if all of these cages are true, it does in fact add up to 45. 17, 17 and 11 is 45. So that's quite interesting. And that means, if this is true, and it could well be, the 217 clues would have to be true. And therefore there should be another 17 clue there, which would need to be false, because one of the 17s has to be false. Now if that's false, right, that's interesting. So this box is also adding up to 45. Look, you've got 17 plus 5 plus 23, that's 45. So if this is wrong, that surely means that that is also wrong. Yes, it does. Because obviously if this only added up to 10, for example, 10 plus 5 is 15. We know the box overall must still add up to 45, because that is indubitable. That is certainly true. One of the few things that we can state as being unequivocally true in this puzzle. So to the extent I meddle with the value of the 17, I must also meddle with the value of the 23, because the 5 is a given and is not changeable. So let's just go through this again. So if this row is true, both of these are now wrong, and the 23 would be wrong, and there should be other 23 clues in the puzzle there and here. Both of those would be wrong. No, both those would be right, because this one is wrong. Oh, good grief. I'm already getting confused. So this is right. If this is right, if that's right, that's 23. These have to, oh, these do add up to 22. Hang on, there's something wrong with that. I know I just said if this is right, but there's something wrong with what we just did. That doesn't feel like it's correct. If that's incorrect, this is correct. But then these two cages are either both wrong, which is impossible because only one of them is allowed to be wrong. So although if this is correct, these 6 cells must add to 22. So they're either both the 11 totals are wrong, so this could be a 10 and this could be a 12, but that's not allowed under the rules of the Sudoku, which tell us that for each total, 2 of the clues are correct and 1 is wrong, not 2 are wrong. So that means both of these would have to be correct clues. So, but if these are correct, that means that one must be wrong. But I started this by saying that this one must be right. Oh! So does all we're learning from this is that this total is not correct? Is that all we're learning? That's absolutely mind-bending. Actually, if this is in any way related to how we're meant to get into the puzzle, this is more difficult for sure than this one. Hang on. Let me just think about this again. So if this is correct, if this total is correct, or put it differently, if these 3 totals are correct, that's wrong, so that's wrong, so that's right, which means these 2 are right, which means this one is wrong, which means in turn that one of the 17s is wrong, which means that that 17 couldn't be wrong, so that is contradictory. Okay, so this has got a fault in it, this row. These 3 cages are not correct. Now if they're not correct, can we narrow this down by thinking about the 217 cages? If the 217 cages were both correct, then the 11 cage would also have to be correct. because if the two 17 cages are correct, we need 11 more in those three cells, and they do indeed add up to 11. So if the two 17s are correct, that logic that flows around the grid would fail again. So the two 17s are not correct. So one of these 17s is wrong. And if one of them is wrong, they can't both be wrong, because you can't have two wrong clues for the same total. This clue is correct. And that means it gets awarded a green colour, because green is for go. And we're going to use green for things that are true. But if that's true, this must be true, because those cells, if this is true, these add to 22, they add to 23 by the secret, and the cage tells us they do add to 23. So that's also green. So now either this clue or this clue is wrong. One of the 17s is wrong. Ah, right. Okay, here is another thing we can say. If one of the 17s is wrong, and it is, then the 11 is also wrong. Because we have to go back to the truth that we know about row 9. Row 9 definitely adds to 45. Now let's say that this cage was correct. So that adds to 17. We then know that this is a wrong total. So these three cells have to pick up the slack. If this was 1 lower than 17, say this was 16, this would have to be 12 in order to pick up the slack to ensure that that row overall added to the right number. So by making one of the 17s incorrect, we make the 11 incorrect by proxy. And if the 11 is incorrect, I'm going to say it's red, and I'm going to go to the other 11s and say that they are true. And if these 11s are true, they add to 22, and these three cells add to 23 using the secret to make 45, and this clue is, yes, correct, which means the other 23, which is there, is Wrogn. Good grief. And we know one of these 17s is wrong. So I'll give this two colours, this bottom row, to indicate one of these is correct, one of them is wrong. I'm actually far from sure that this is how you meant to do this puzzle, though, because what have I actually learned? Oh, I know what I've learned from that. If that 23 is true, then I know what I know how to make those three cells up. There's only one way of making three different digits add to 23 in a Sudoku: 6, 8, and 9. Ah, right. Now I believe we may be on the right track, because I can see immediately now that these 12s are not. They are not both true, because well, one of these cells at least would have to have an 8 or a 9 in it, and there's no way you can make a 4-cell cage add up to 12 if one of the cells in it is an 8 or a 9, because the other three digits would have a minimum value of 1 plus 2 plus 3, which is 6. 6 plus 8 or 9 is definitely more than 12. So one of these is wrong, which means the other 12, which is here, that's correct. Oh, right, okay, and that means it's got a 1 in it. And in fact a 2 in it, but it definitely has a 1 in it, and that marries up with our tetromino of 1s in box 6 and plonks a 1 into one of those three squares in box 4. But this is an incorrect total, so I can't even say if there's a 1 in here, the other three squares would have to have a 9 in. Okay. Okay, right. Let's carry on with the 12s then, because what these two cells here can't be an 8-9 pair, because then both 12s would be incorrect. So there's definitely a 6 in one of those positions, which means that square is not a 6. It also means that one of these strings of digits is a 1, 2, 3 triple, because the only way of making 12 in 4 cells, if you've got 6 as one of the digits, is it with 1, 2, 3 in the other cells. So well, these are these are probably not both 1, 2. In fact, they aren't both 1, 2, 3. The reason we know that is if these were both 1, 2, 3, that would put 1, 2, and 3 in box 1 into a correct 11 cage. And here is a knowledge bomb. 6 is not the same number as 11. So, one of these strings exactly is a 1, 2, 3. Which means what then? Does that put pressure on this 11 cage? If you've got... yeah, okay. We've got to put 7 into one of these 11 cages. And now we know which one it is. That's really beautiful, actually. This can't have a 7 in it. Because if it has 7 in it, the other 2 digits have to add up to 4 and be 1 and 3. Now, if that's a 137 triple, and one of these 11 cages is a 137 triple, now whichever one of these 2 clues is correct, you're going to end up with a Schrödinger cell. Imagine this was correct. This square here would have to be a 1 and a 3 simultaneously. Now, you don't get, situations in Sudoku where the cat is both alive and dead at the same time. No such thing as Schrödinger cells. So this would be impossible. In other words, this is not the 137. This is 137, and that must be 2, 4, 5. And there's definitely 2 in one of these. So this square can't be a 2, because if that's a 2, you could no longer have either of those triples being correct. So that's not 2. There's a 2 in one of these. And that I don't think is going to do us any favours. No way. So we've got... Oh no, I see, it does. Right, no, I was looking here. I should have been looking over here. Right, let us consider... Oh, what about let us consider was Alexa? What was it? Sorry, Alexa wants to talk to us. I haven't allowed Alexa to access the internet because I don't trust Alexas. I don't trust the monitoring that's done by Alexa. My story about this, which I've probably told on the channel before, is once I was doing the Times crossword and a word came up that had its origins in a very obscure work of Dickens. And I did nothing more than look up that word in my Chambers dictionary on my computer hard drive. So I literally typed the word in to my computer. And I then, when I was looking at my iPad later that day, was constantly being recommended said book by Dickens by Facebook. I needed to buy this book, and that really freaked me out. Anyway, I digress. I know what I was doing. I was excited about this because this can't be true in the sense that if this is a 6, that has to be a 1, 2, 3 triple now, but now that has to be 7, 8, 9 in the row. And if that's 7, 8, 9, it adds to 24 in a 23 cage, which is correct. And that would be Wrogn. So it may be correct, but it would be simultaneously wrong, and that's not what we're looking for. So this can't be a true cage. And if it's not a true cage, that must be the true cage. So this gets awarded red status. It loses its... I was about to say it loses... I think it does lose its ability to be 1, 2, 3. Or maybe that doesn't, if that's a high digit. 1, 2... Anyway, it matters not. This now must be the correct version of the 12 cage, which means we can actually pencil in the 1, 2, 3. This square is the 6. That's not the 6. And now, yes, okay, and now that's the 2, isn't it? So that gives us a 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 sextuple in column 1 and a 7, 8, 9 triple at the bottom of the column. And, pregnant pause while I try and work out what, if anything, that does give us. That gives us pressure on that 14 cage, I suppose if that's true. If that's true, true, that would have to be a 7 or an 8. Because those three squares would have a minimum value of 6 if they were 1, 2, and 3. Oh, the 17 could be true or not. We don't know. Oh, if that 17 was true, we'd have a 7, 8, 9 triple in row 9. The problem with that, though, is that this 11 is a liar. So we don't actually know anything about those three squares other than, I suppose, they do not sum to 11. Because if they did sum to 11, that clue would have to turn itself green. Oh, right, hang on. I'm now looking at this again. I worked out earlier that the 1 was in one of those three squares. Well, it now must be there, because this is a 1, 2, 3 triple, and the 1 can't be lower down. So that gets awarded 1 status. 2 gets shifted up here into an 18 cage, which might be a liar, otherwise that would be 2, 7, 9. Does that put pressure on whichever of these 8 cages is correct? Perhaps. Oh, I can't use row 4. I was about to get quite interested in row 4, because if these 2 clues were true, those 2 clues would have to add up to only 4, and that would have been useful. But unfortunately, in fact, it would have been really useful, because it would have then determined what nature the 12 cage is. This 12 cage is either 1, 2, 3, 6 or 1, 2, 4, 5. So a 3 there would have been quite handy. Okay, no, I don't know what to do there. Let's have a look at this 10 clue, because that diagonal, although it's green, could, I suppose, be wrong, because all we're saying with the greens is that the 23 clue and the 17 clue are correct, so that doesn't need to be correct. But if it was correct, those 2 squares would add up to 5. There's a 10 clue here and a 10 clue there. Okay, don't think we know. Well, no, actually we don't. Well, I know if that's real, it's not 2, 8. That's not the greatest deduction in the history of cracking the cryptic. The 18 clue, that's a little interesting, because these 2 squares can't actually include a high digit at all. So the 18, if this was true, can only include one of the high digits. Which is, well, actually maybe it's not that interesting. Oh dear. This is where this is where it can all grind to a halt, and indeed it has. So 18 here, 18 here, 18 here. I don't think there's anything too clever we can do there, is there? 14. Oh yeah, that 14. Maybe that's where we're meant to look next. If the 14 is true, these digits are all quite low. Feels like that's very difficult to do that, because that 14 cage, well, I suppose, oh, if that's true, that could be false. Oh! You rotten thing. Oh dear. No, okay, forget that. Can we do more with our 8 cages again now then? Have we learned anything more? We know that there are 2s up here. Oh, hang on, I've got too many low digits. Oh. Okay, there is something very important. I was about to say I've got too many low digits in row 6, but I don't. I've got exactly the right number of low digits in row 6. This is gorgeous. Right, let's talk about this. 12 in 4 cells has 2 options. It's either 1, 2, 4, 5, which it's not. In fact, that's going to be the easy way of looking at this. If this is 1, 2, 4, 5, the problem here is that 2 of these 3 8 cages is correct, and the only way of making 8 is 1, 3, 4 or 1, 2, 5. In other words, the correct 2 of these 3 digits here are selected from the digits 1 to 5 only. But that means that if this was a 1, 2, 4, 5 version of the 12 gauge, we'd have 6 digits. Let's say it's these two that were correct. You'd have 6 digits in row 6 that have to be selected from the digits 1 to 5. That won't work. You'll have to repeat a digit. So this is huge because, well, firstly, it tells us the nature of the 12 gauge. The 12 gauge is now 1, 2, 3, and 6. Secondly, well, that's now a 1, 2, 3, 6 quadruple, which tells us that the digits over here, the correct 8 gauges are giving a 4 and a 5 into 2 of these 3 squares, because that's the only remaining digits that are legal in the 8 gauge that haven't been used up in the row. This is beautiful. This is really beautiful. Now we should look at this 8 gauge and this 8 gauge, because how could they both be true? If they're both true, this would be a 4-5 pair, and these squares would have to be selected from 1s, 2s and 3s, because these are the high digits in their 8 gauges, and you can't select 4 digits from 4 cells from 3 digits without repeating a digit again. So that tells us that this little clue here, let's back up, this little clue is correct, which means that little square is a 4 or a 5, definitely. And one of these two, no, it tells us that square is in fact a 4, and that's a 1, 3 pair. Oh, this is gorgeous again. Look. Now look, we can get this digit as well, because this digit cannot be a 3, because the 3 in box 4 is in one of those 2 cells, the 3 in box 5 is in one of those cells. So if I was to put a 3 here, that would be a third 3 in 2 rows of the Sudoku. Well, you can't put 3 of the same digit in only 2 rows without breaking the puzzle. So that's a 1, that's a 3. Now I know that this 18 gauge is broken, because it's now got to have a 2 and a 3 in it, because the 3s are aligning there and there. So the 3 in row 4 has to be in one of those 3 squares. So this row is just a disgrace, isn't it? This is the Kaiser Sose of the puzzle. I mean, there's a lie here and a lie here, and just almost nothing true about it. Now, if that's a lying 18, other 18s must be telling the truth. So that's true, and this is true. Which again feels like it's putting pressure on these digits, doesn't it? Because, let me just think about this. So if that's 8, well, if this is 7, oh no, it still can work. Oh, bobbins. Maybe not as much pressure as I thought, actually. Apologies. I think I'm going to pencil in the options for these squares. If this is a 7, this has to be 11, and it has to be 5, 6. If this is 8, this has to be 10 and has to be 4, 6, because 7, 8, 9 are not available. But if this is 9, this has to be 9 without being 1, 8 or 2, 7. So it's either 4, 5 or 3, 6. Well, that's... Oh, no, it's not. I was wondering if that was going to allow me to break the 14 gauge here. I'm not sure it does, though. I can still have a 3 there and a 1, 2 there. Bother. Okay. Now, if that's a 1, that's not a 1. 2, 3. That's not a 3. Look, we know there's a 3 in one of those 2 squares now. We've not got 4 in these squares anymore. We've got a 5 in... Okay, that's a little interesting. We've got a 5 in one of these 2 cells in the correct version of the 8 gauge. That must have a 1, 2 pair beneath it. Does that stop that being... Yeah, hang on. That's absolutely beautiful. Right. So we've got sort of a thing going on here. Let me explain the thing. We have got a 5 for certain in one of these two cells. And it's in wherever the 5 is, it's the correct 8 cage. So it has a 1-2 domino in one of those squares. That means one of these two squares has only got the option of being 1 or 2. So we could actually pencil mark the 2s into those 4 squares. But I don't know which one of these it is, but there has to be a 1 or a 2 in one of those 2 squares. Now, how does this 14 cage ever work then now? If this was a true 14 cage, this could never be 9, ever. If it was 8, that would be 1, 2, 3, and those 2 squares couldn't have a 1 or a 2 in them. If it's 7, it's 1, 2, 4, and they still couldn't have a 1 or a 2 in them. So this 14 cage is telling lies. I love it when that happens. That means that 14 cage is telling the truth. Oh, and this 14 diagonal is telling the truth. So, right, this feels important, doesn't it? Because now, what does that mean in terms of if this is telling the truth, if this 8 cage is true, that's a 5, that's a 3. Those 2 squares have to add up to 6. But there's a 1, 2, 3 triple in there. If this is correct and is a 5, that's a 1, 2, 3 triple. So that's at least a 4. 5, 3, 4. This would be a 1 or a 2. That's putting pressure on the 14 cage. No. Oh, I thought it was breaking. But it's not, is it? If that's a 1 or a 2, it's okay. You're going to have a 1 or a 2 up there. That's going to marry up with its friends over here. Push this square to being a 1 exactly. So that's going to be 1. That's going to be 2. There's going to be a 1 in here. No, okay. I think that's getting close to being broken, but I can't quite see how. But yeah, and this doesn't have to be a 5, of course. If this isn't a 5, that's a 5. And then this would be a very low digit. But that would have the problem that this would be a high digit. Yeah, that's huge. Right, okay, let's look at this. So I've gone through the option if this is a 5, i.e. if this cage is correct. But what happens if this is the correct 8 cage? Now, the thing that's interesting there is that this actually gets much higher because it now can't be 1, 2, 3, 6, 4 or 5. That would have to be at least 7. 7 plus 3 is 10. These two have to add up to at most 4. So that could be a 3 then. Okay. It could be 1 here, 3 here. So this is low. This is definitely a low digit. Ooh, the 30 diagonal. That's quite interesting because those 2 digits look low. How many? We've got 6 digits on the diagonal, averaging 5. It's probably not terminal then. We've got 2 low digits. We could just make that up with high digits, although those 2 both can't be particularly high. But then those 2 could be high. What about this 14 cage then? If this was a 1, this would have to be 2, 3, 4, 5. That doesn't actually work. Good grief. Right. I don't think this works. If this is 1, this has to be 2, 3, 4, 5. And now we ask the question where the 2 goes in row 9, and the answer is nowhere. That 2 rules it out of that cell. You can't put a 2 in there because the 2's in the 14 cage. And we know one of these dominoes is a 1-2 pair, so there's no 2 down there. So that is not a 1. Now that means that there must be a 1 in the 14 cage. Yeah, okay, the way to think about this is that this 5-cell pentomino either adds up to 16 or 17. Yeah, and now I can just do the same trick with what. This is really lovely. This is lovely. You can, hopefully it's very clear that this if there was no 1 in this 14 cage, it's only got one option, which would be 2, 3, 4, 5. That means this cell would have no value. So there's definitely a 1 in the 14 cage. It marries up with its 1 over here, wherever that lives, and therefore the 1 in row 9 only goes there, which means that's not a 1. Yeah, this is it's usual Zetamath magic. This. Yeah. Okay. Look at this. If this is a 2, those squares have to be 1, 3, 4, and 6 to make sure that these 5 cells altogether add up to 16. There's only one way of doing it. Now, if that's 1, 3, 4, 6. You ask the same question about row 9. Where does the 3 go this time? Given there would be a 3 in there and a 3 here, that square has to be a 3. Now what would happen though if this was a 3? Well, you have to now put a 2 in the 14 cage, because if you don't, the minimum you'd have here would be 1, 4, 5 and 6, which is too many. That's definitely right, isn't it? Let me just think about that again. If this is a 3, and you don't put 2 in there, it's 1, 4, 5, 6, which is definitely 16. Yeah, so that's not right. So that means, yeah, and this actually disambiguates it as well, because now this is telling us this cannot be a 3. Because if it's a 3, you have to put a 2 in the 14 cage. The 2 in box 9 is in a domino. Therefore, the 2 in row 9 is now not placed anywhere at all. So that has to be a 2, good grief, and that has to be a 3, and there is a 3 in the 14 cage. And not only that, we know this pentomino adds up to 16, which means it must contain the digits exactly 1, 2, 3, 4, and 6. And we can just delete this and write 1, 3, 4, and 6 into these cells. Happy days. And there's no 3s in there, so this is 1, 4, or 6. Okay. And what does this mean? This means, this means I can put a 3 here. So now we maybe do we do some Sudoku now, of all things. Fancy Zetamath, including Sudoku to do in a Sudoku puzzle. This is outrageous. That's no longer a 3. Oh, I tell you what. That was correct, wasn't it? Yes, this 18 is a correct diagonal. So now those two squares add up to 15. There's only one way that works. That's 6, that's 9. Whoa. So this is a 7-8 pair. I think this puzzle is harder. I think it's harder than this one. I really do. Unless I'm being slow today, but this is very intricate. Now, we know this is wrong, so I can't actually use that. The 18 has got greened in. That seems to say it's correct, so this can't be a 2, because that would have to be a 7-9 pair to give us the other 16 we'd need to make 18 altogether, and there seems to be a 7 up there. So this square is a 2. That one's wrong. I keep looking at that 14 gauge, trying to add it up. Now that's a 2, so that moves the 2s out of those squares in whichever one of these 8 cages is correct. So the 2 is here, the 1 must be beneath it. So now either this is 5, 2, 1, or this is 5, 2, 1. And that means, yeah, this is so clever. Now 1 is in one of those two cells, so it's not there. There's a 4 here as well, actually. So that's become a 1-6 pair, which means 6 gets removed from here. So now what do we know about the world? Now we know, well, I know those 3 digits are from 2s, 7s and 8s. And that's not a 2, because the 2's got to be in the correct 8 cage. I now need 9 more on my 14 diagonal. My 14 diagonal was correct because that one was wrong. So these two have to add up to 9. And that one has to be a relatively high digit, doesn't it? That's 5, 7, 8 or 9. So that's 5, 7 or 8. So this square is either 1, 2 or 4. And it's not... it's not 4 and it's not 2. So this square here is a 1. That square there is an 8. And that diagonal adds up to 14 in the only way that we can make it work. And this is beautiful for us because now we know, as this is not 5, this is 5 and is the correct version of the 8 gauge we've been looking for. So that must be the 2. That must be a 7 by Sudoku. That becomes an 8. We know this is telling lies, so we label it red. We know that there's got to be a 1 over here by Sudoku. There's got to be a 5 in one of those by Sudoku. There's got to be I don't know. Can we rule anything out? Can we prove that this is wrong? If this is correct, it now has to be 8 here, 9 here, which would make that a 7. Oh, and this would need to be... Hang on, where are we with 17s? That one was correct, wasn't it? So if that's correct, that needs to be wrong. I'm wondering if we could use the negative constraint almost here. If that's correct, this has to be wrong, and this would be a 7, so it would add up to 11, so this couldn't be a 6. Well, we can see it can't be a 6 anyway. Okay, no, we can't. No, I know what we can do. Here we go. Right, simple Sudoku. Where does 6 go in row 9? One of those 3 cells. Where does 4 go in row 9? One of those 3 cells. So one of these digits at least must be a 4 or a 6. So it's not a 17 gauge. So this is wrong. It's all... Oh, if it's wrong, I can get rid of its green possibility. And this becomes green. So this is now correct. Oh, and I just worked out this couldn't be a 6, didn't I? Hang on. If that's a 7, 10, 11, that has to be a 6, which it can't be. So that's got to be 8. This is 7. That must be 5. 7 and 9 to place in box 8. There's a 7 here. So that's 7. That's 9. These squares are now known. They are a 4, 6, 9 triple. That square is not a 1. This must be a 5, 8 pair. Yeah, the 8 goes here. The 5 goes here. So this cage, after all of this, ended up adding up to 20 and not 8 after all. That's not a 4. Now sometimes with these puzzles, when you get a bit of traction, they can give up. Please, Zetamath, please give up. Oh, Bobbins. Okay, which clues have I actually used now? That's a good question. Oh, look, I've got a 5 here. Look, 5 resolves all this. You'll all have been shouting about that for ages. 5's in one of those 3 squares. Ooh. Oh, that's right, gorgeous. How long have I and what's more, I wouldn't have known this, thank goodness, until now, because this 5 is ruling out that square. So, although I will admit that 4-5 has been resolved for about 45 minutes, this 5 I've only just earned, so I couldn't have proved this 10 gauge wrong until just now. But now I can, because it's got a 5 in it. It can't be true, because if it's true, it's got to be now double 5. So that's telling lies. This is now telling the truth, and this is telling the truth. Okay, I don't know which of those to look at first. Maybe this one. 2, 3, 6. Yes, in fact, this is rather nice. Look at this row. I've got 1, 2, 3 and 6 in this row, but the 6 in this quadruple is definitely in this triple. So there's no 6 there. And look what that does. 1, 2, 3 in the row. So this has got to be a 4, 6 pair, and there's a 4 here. So that's a 4, that's a 6. That's not a 6. This 4 tidies some stuff up down here. That's no longer a 3. Those two squares are now a 7, 9 pair, aren't they? Oh, I see, and we know the order because of this 1, 7 pair. This 18 cage is correct, and now it's got a 9 in it, so this is a 4 or a 5, and it's not a 4. That's a 5, that's a 4, that's a 5. This square must be, yeah, okay, that's an 8, that must be a 6 by Sudoku. Those two squares have got to be a 4, 8 pair, there's a 4 here. 4, 8 go into the grid. Oh, this is a lie, so we don't know what that's telling us. But we've got a lot of digits now. We need 7 and 9. Yeah, where do we put 7 in row 5? There. That's got to be a 9. Okay, that doesn't seem to resolve it. We know these digits now exactly. They are 5, 8 and 9. So this is an 8 naked single. And this is a 5, 9 pair. And these squares are now known. They've got to be 2, 3 and 7. Can't see if we can actually do that. 2, 3 and 7. So this was telling lies. This is telling the truth. Oh, and this was telling the truth, wasn't it? So these two squares add up to 5. So they're either 1, 4 or 2, 3. So this is a 1 or a 2, and this is a 3 or a 4, because we can't make this the low portion of this. 3, 4, 1, 2. Feels like this is resolved somehow. Oh, Simon. 8 in box 3. Where does it go? It goes in the 17 cage because of those 8s. In fact, it goes in one of those two cells. So the other cells in the 17 cage have got to add up to 9, and they are not 1, 8. That would repeat the 8, and they're not 4, 5. That would repeat the 5. So they're either they're not 3, 6, because that's not a Schrodinger cell. Can't simultaneously be 3 and 6. So this is 2, 7 and 8, and there's a 2 here. That's gorgeous. 2, 7, 8 pair, which fixes this square. That's now a 3. That's a 2. That's a 7. That's a 4 now by Sudoku. Oh, there we go. Now the 10's done. That's got to be a 1. That's got to be a 1. That's got to be a 7. Fixes the 7 and the 8. That's a 9. I think that's been available for a while. Looking at my lack of Sudoku over there. 3's, that's a 9. This is a 3, 6 pair, which might not be resolved. That's therefore a 4. That's a 9. That's a 6. The final 3 columns are all but done. Don't know what this is. Have we used up almost all the clues? Oh, we've not used up these big 30 clues in diagonals. I've hardly looked at those at all. Hang on a sec. Let me just think. This is a lie, isn't it? So I can't use that. 8 I can place in box 2 because there are actually 8. There are 4 8s looking at box 2. So that square's got to be 8. We're also looking for 2, in fact, yeah, let's keep going with this. 2, 3 and 6 along this row. Well, that square there sees 2 and 3, so that's got to be 6. That fixes a 6 and a 3 and places a 2. And this 6 places a 1. So we can get rid of 1s from those squares, and we get a 2, 3, 6 triple. Don't know. Okay, and those squares have got to be 4, 5 and 9. So that's a naked single 4. This is a 5, 9 pair. So yeah, it was 14 and not 10. There's a 5, 9 pair now here. So that means the top cell in the grid needs to be a 7 in that column. That we need a 1 in one of those, and we also need a 3. I don't believe it. 1, 3 pair. I don't think it's resolved, is it? 1, 3, 6 triple here. 1, 2, 3, 6 quadruple there. Bother. Oh. That's very cool. That is absolutely beautiful. Look at this deadly pattern of 5s and 9s. And look, how are we going to resolve this? How are we going to know whether the correct solution is 5599 or 99555? What is it about the puzzle's internal logic that tells us the correct disposition of these 5s and 9s? Well, there's only one thing it could be. It's this cell creeping into this 23 cage. And look what it does. These 3 add up to 18. So if this was a 5, it would be correct. And we know that this is a liar. So that cannot be a 5. That has to be 9955. That is absolutely beautiful. It's just ridiculous. It really is. Now, is it these... Oh, it's going to be these 30 diagonals. Look, this one's all but done. What does this add up to? We've got 14, 15, and 12 is 27. I probably added that up wrong. This one certainly seems to be impossible. Hang on, let me just do that again. 14, 15, yeah, and 12. It is 27. Okay, so this is just a lie, this one. It's just a downright lie. A dirty, rotten fib. That means these two 30s must be correct. So let's... wouldn't it be awful if I can't make these work now? Let's do this. So 1627 here. This needs to be a 3, and it can be, thank goodness. 3 and 2. This one... we've got 18 there. 24. We need a 6. Are we getting... And we can get a 6. Yes. 6, 1. 1, 3. 2, 6, 3. And these become greens. I think we've done it, haven't we? And that becomes a green on this diagonal. Probably should have used a different colour for diagonally correct clues. And that one's incorrect down that diagonal. It's so clever. It's just ridiculous, isn't it? It's ridiculous how you can build that much logic into a 9x9 grid. I haven't clicked tick, but it is correct. It felt correct. Absolutely wonderful. Really, really special puzzle. And I'm going to say this. I think this is harder than that one. This one, I'm going to spoil something about the solving part if I say something there. I'm not going to do that. Try this one and see if you agree with me. I think this one's more difficult, but they're both wonderful. Let me know in the comments how you got on. I do enjoy reading the comments, especially when they're kind. And we'll be back later with another edition of Cracking the Cryptic.